I knew something was wrong the moment I saw the neon orange notice flapping on my mailbox like a distressed bird trying to escape. It was a Tuesday morning in April, and I had just pulled my truck into my own driveway after a 12-hour shift at the construction site in Mesa, Arizona. My muscles ached, my boots were caked with red desert dust, and all I wanted was a shower and maybe 8 hours of uninterrupted sleep. Instead, I got a headache that would consume the next 3 months of my life. The notice was printed on official-looking letterhead with Sunset Ridge HOA emblazoned across the top in an aggressively serif font. I ripped it off the mailbox, leaving a sticky residue from the tape, and read it while standing in the 90-degree heat. "Dear homeowner," it began, because apparently my name was too much trouble to include. "It has come to our attention that you are parking a commercial vehicle in your driveway in violation of Section 4.7 of the Sunset Ridge Homeowners Association covenants, conditions, and restrictions. You have 7 days to remove this vehicle or face fines of $100 per day. Sincerely, Patricia Montgomery, HOA President." I looked at my truck. It was a Ford F-250 white with my company's logo on the door. I had been parking it in this exact spot for 2 years, ever since I bought this house on Cactus Flower Drive. Not once had anyone said a word about it. I crumpled the notice in my fist and walked inside, telling myself I would deal with it after some sleep. Sleep did not come easily. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling fan as it rotated lazily, thinking about Patricia Montgomery. I had met her exactly once, at a community meeting I attended shortly after moving in. She was a woman in her late 40s with blonde hair that looked like it had been sprayed into submission with an entire can of hairspray. She wore a pantsuit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment, and spoke in the clipped, authoritative tone of someone who believed the world operated according to her personal preferences. I had left that meeting early, sensing that any community run by Patricia Montgomery was not one I wanted to be deeply involved with. The next morning, I called the HOA office. A receptionist with a bored voice answered on the 5th ring. "Sunset Ridge HOA, this is Debbie." "Hi, Debbie. My name is Brandon Irving. I live at 2847 Cactus Flower Drive, and I just got a notice about my truck. I need to speak with someone about this because I think there has been a mistake." "What kind of mistake?" Debbie asked, and I could hear her typing something in the background. "The notice says I cannot park my work truck in my driveway, but I have been doing that since I moved in 2 years ago. Nobody has ever mentioned it before." More typing. "Let me pull up your file." "Okay, yes, I see the violation notice. It was issued by Mrs. Montgomery herself. She drives through the neighborhood regularly to check for violations." "But it is my driveway," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "I own this property. How can the HOA tell me what I can park in my own driveway? Sir, when you purchased your home, you agreed to abide by the CC and Articles. Those are binding legal documents. If you would like to dispute this violation, you need to submit a written appeal to the board. The next board meeting is in 3 weeks. 3 weeks. That meant I would already be accruing fines if I did not move my truck. Can I speak to Mrs. Montgomery directly?" "She is not available right now, but I can leave her a message." I left my number, knowing Patricia Montgomery would not call me back. That afternoon, I dug out the thick packet of documents I had signed at closing 2 years ago. Buried in the middle of 100 pages of legal jargon, I found Section 4.7. No commercial vehicles, boats, recreational vehicles, or trailers shall be parked in driveways or visible from the street for more than 24 hours. I read it 3 times, feeling my blood pressure rise with each pass. My truck was not a semi. It was not a delivery van with advertisements splashed across every surface. It was a pickup truck that happened to have a small company logo on the door. Half the people in Arizona drove trucks just like mine. This was absurd. I decided to do some research. I spent the evening going through online forums and legal websites, reading about HOA disputes. What I found was disturbing. Homeowners associations across the country wielded enormous power, often acting like miniature governments with the authority to fine, sue, and even foreclose on homes for violations as trivial as the wrong shade of beige on a front door. Some people had lost their homes over unpaid HOA fines that spiraled into tens of thousands of dollars. But I also found something interesting. In Arizona, HOAs could only enforce rules regarding property that they actually controlled. Common areas, like parks and community pools, were fair game. But private property, like the interior of someone's home or their backyard, was generally off-limits unless the violation was visible from the street or affected the community in some measurable way. The question was whether my driveway counted as private property or whether the HOA's CC and Articus gave them authority over it. I called a lawyer the next day. His name was Michael Chen, and he specialized in real estate law. His office was in Scottsdale, about 20 minutes from my house. I took a morning off work to meet with him, which cost me $200 in lost wages on top of his consultation fee. Michael was younger than I expected, maybe in his mid-30s, with glasses and a calm demeanor that immediately put me at ease. I showed him the violation notice and the relevant section of the CC and Articus. He read through everything carefully, occasionally making notes on a legal pad. "Okay," he said finally, "here is the situation. Yes, you signed these CC and Articus when you purchased your home, and yes, they are legally binding. However, the enforceability of this particular rule is questionable." "Questionable how?" I asked. "Well, Arizona law gives HOAs broad authority, but that authority is not unlimited. Your driveway is on your private property. The HOA can regulate things that are visible from the street if those regulations serve a legitimate community interest, like maintaining property values. But a work truck with a small logo is not the same as parking a commercial semi or running a business that generates traffic and noise. A court might find that this rule is overly broad or that the HOA is enforcing it in an arbitrary manner. So what should I do? First, file a written appeal with the board. Document everything, including when you moved in, how long you have been parking your truck there without issue, and why this rule is unreasonable as applied to your situation. Second, attend the board meeting and make your case in person. If they deny your appeal, you can sue the HOA for declaratory relief, asking a court to rule that the HOA does not have the authority to enforce this rule against you. But litigation is expensive and time-consuming. It could cost you $10,000 or more, and it might take a year to resolve. $10,000. I felt sick. What if I just ignore the notice? Michael shook his head. Do not do that. They will fine you, and those fines will accumulate. Eventually, they can put a lien on your property or even foreclose. I have seen it happen. These HOAs do not mess around. I left his office feeling trapped. I could not afford a prolonged legal battle, but I also could not afford to buy a second vehicle just to keep my work truck somewhere else. I did not have a garage. My house was a modest 3-bedroom with a carport that barely fit one car, let alone a truck the size of mine. And where was I supposed to park it? Storage units cost money I did not have, and street parking was prohibited in my neighborhood. That evening, I drafted my written appeal. I explained that I had been parking my truck in my driveway for 2 years without any complaints, that the truck was necessary for my job, and that the HOA's rule was being applied in an unreasonable manner. I included photos of my truck to show that it was not an eyesore or a nuisance. I even cited the Arizona statutes Michael had mentioned, hoping it would make me sound like I knew what I was talking about. I submitted the appeal the next day via certified mail so I would have proof that the HOA received it. A week passed. I heard nothing. The 7-day deadline came and went. On the 8th day, I received another notice, this time informing me that I was being fined $100 per day until the violation was corrected. I called the HOA office again. Debbie answered. "Hi, Debbie, it is Brandon Irving again. I submitted a written appeal last week, but I just got a notice saying I am being fined. I thought appeals were supposed to pause enforcement." "Appeals do not pause enforcement," Debbie said. "They just give you an opportunity to present your case to the board. The fines continue to accumulate until the violation is resolved." "That does not make any sense. What is the point of an appeal if I am still being punished? Sir, I do not make the rules. I just work here." I hung up, resisting the urge to throw my phone across the room. Instead, I got in my truck and drove to the HOA office, which was located in a small strip mall near the entrance to the neighborhood. The office was cramped and smelled like stale coffee. Debbie was sitting behind a desk, looking at her computer screen. She glanced up when I walked in, and I saw a flicker of recognition in her eyes. "I need to speak to Patricia Montgomery," I said. "She is not here." "When will she be here?" "I do not know. She does not keep regular office hours." "Then I will wait." Debbie sighed. "Sir, she might not come in today at all. If you want to speak to her, you need to schedule an appointment." "Fine. Schedule an appointment for me." Debbie clicked through her computer. "The earliest availability is 2 weeks from now." 2 weeks? The board meeting is in less than 3 weeks. I will have accumulated over $2,000 in fines by then. I understand your frustration, but that is the earliest she has available. I stared at Debbie, trying to determine if she was genuinely powerless or just unwilling to help. Her expression was neutral, almost robotic. I realized I was wasting my time. "You know what, forget it. I will see her at the board meeting." I left the office and sat in my truck for a long time, trying to figure out my next move. I could move the truck, but where? I called a few friends, but none of them had space to store a vehicle long term. I looked into storage units, and the cheapest one I could find was $150 a month, which was more than the HOA fine if I just paid it and moved on. But paying the fine felt like admitting defeat, like agreeing that the HOA had the right to control what I did on my own property. I decided to do something that probably was not smart, but felt necessary. I started a paper trail. Every day, I took photos of my truck parked in my driveway. I documented every interaction with the HOA. I saved every email, every notice, every piece of correspondence. If this was going to turn into a legal battle, I wanted to be prepared. The board meeting finally arrived on a Wednesday evening. It was held in the community center, a bland stucco building with folding tables and uncomfortable plastic chairs. About 20 people were in attendance, most of them older residents who looked like they had nothing better to do. Patricia Montgomery sat at the front of the room behind a long table, flanked by 4 other board members. She was wearing another pantsuit, this one navy blue, and her expression was one of practiced superiority. The meeting started with mundane business, approving the minutes from the last meeting, discussing the budget for landscaping, debating whether to repaint the community pool. I sat in the back, watching the clock and waiting for my turn. Finally, after 45 minutes of tedium, Patricia called my name. "Brandon Irving, you submitted an appeal regarding a commercial vehicle violation. You have 5 minutes to present your case." I stood and walked to the front of the room, acutely aware of everyone's eyes on me. I had rehearsed what I wanted to say, but now that I was standing there, my mind felt blank. I took a breath and started talking. 2 years ago, I bought a home in this neighborhood. Since day one, I have parked my work truck in my driveway. It is a Ford F-250, and yes, it has my company's logo on the door, but it is not a commercial vehicle in the traditional sense. It is a pickup truck. I use it to get to and from work, and I need it for my job as a construction foreman. I do not run a business out of my home. I do not have clients coming and going. The truck just sits in my driveway when I am not using it. For 2 years, nobody said anything. Now, suddenly, I am being fined $100 a day for a violation that was never an issue before. This does not seem fair or reasonable. Patricia did not look up from the papers in front of her. "Mr. Irving, fairness is not the issue. The CC and Articus clearly state that commercial vehicles are not allowed to be parked in driveways. You signed those CC and Articus when you purchased your home. Ignorance of the rules is not an excuse." "I am not claiming ignorance," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I am saying that this rule is being applied in a way that does not make sense. My truck is not bothering anyone. It is not an eyesore. It is just a truck." One of the other board members, an older man with a comb-over, leaned forward. "The rule exists to maintain the aesthetic quality of the neighborhood. Allowing commercial vehicles sets a precedent. What is to stop someone else from parking a plumbing van or a landscaping trailer in their driveway?" "My truck is not a van or a trailer," I said. "It is a standard pickup truck that half the people in Arizona drive." "With a commercial logo," Patricia interjected. "That makes it a commercial vehicle. Then what am I supposed to do? I cannot afford to buy another vehicle just to park at home. I do not have a garage. Where am I supposed to put it?" Patricia finally looked up, and her eyes were cold. "That is not the HOA's problem, Mr. Irving. You need to find a solution that complies with the rules. Perhaps you could park it at your workplace or rent a storage unit." "My workplace is 40 minutes away, and storage units cost money I do not have. This is my home. My driveway is on my property. How can you tell me what I can and cannot park there?" "Because you agreed to abide by the CC and Articus," Patricia said, her voice rising slightly. "This is not a dictatorship, Mr. Irving. These rules were put in place to protect everyone's property values. If we allow one person to break the rules, it creates chaos." I wanted to argue more, but I could see that it was pointless. The board had already made up their minds. Patricia called for a vote, and all 5 board members voted to uphold the violation. My appeal was denied. I left the meeting feeling defeated and angry. On the drive home, I called Michael Chen and told him what had happened. He was not surprised. "That is typical," he said. "HOA boards rarely overturn their own decisions. Your next step is to decide whether you want to sue. I can draft a complaint, but you need to understand that this will be expensive and there are no guarantees." "How much are we talking?" "Probably $10,000 to $15,000, maybe more if it goes to trial, and it could take a year or longer to resolve." I did not have that kind of money, and I told him so. He was sympathetic but realistic. "Then your options are limited. You can pay the fines and move the truck, or you can continue to accrue fines and hope the HOA backs down, which is unlikely. Or you can try to negotiate with them." "Negotiate?" Patricia Montgomery does not strike me as the negotiating type. "Maybe not, but it is worth a shot. Offer to cover the logo on your truck, or park it in a way that is less visible. Sometimes these disputes can be resolved with a compromise." I thanked him and hung up. The idea of negotiating with Patricia felt about as appealing as negotiating with a brick wall, but I was running out of options. The next day, I sent an email to the HOA board, proposing that I cover the logo on my truck with a magnetic sheet. I even included a photo of what it would look like. I thought it was a reasonable compromise. Patricia responded within an hour. "Mr. Irving, the issue is not just the logo. The issue is that your truck is a commercial vehicle, and commercial vehicles are not allowed in driveways. Covering the logo does not change the fact that it is a commercial vehicle. Your violation stands." I stared at the email, feeling my frustration boil over. How was my truck a commercial vehicle if the logo was covered? It would look like every other pickup truck in the neighborhood. This was not about maintaining property values or protecting the community. This was about control. Patricia Montgomery wanted to prove that she was in charge, and I was the unlucky target of her power trip. I decided to do some digging. I drove around the neighborhood, taking photos of other vehicles. It did not take long to find violations. A house 2 streets over had a boat parked in the driveway, covered with a tarp. Another house had a trailer with landscaping equipment. A third house had an RV parked on the side yard, partially visible from the street. None of these homes had received violation notices, at least not that I could see. I compiled the photos into a document and sent it to the HOA board, along with a pointed email. It has come to my attention that there are multiple violations of Section 4.7 in the neighborhood that have not been addressed. I have attached photos for your reference. I find it troubling that my truck is being singled out while other, more obvious violations are being ignored. This suggests that the rule is being enforced in an arbitrary and discriminatory manner. This time, Patricia did not respond. Instead, I received a letter from the HOA's attorney, a law firm in Phoenix. The letter was brief and threatening. It informed me that I was now being fined $200 per day instead of $100, and that if I did not comply within 30 days, the HOA would place a lien on my property. The letter also warned me against making defamatory statements about the board or its members. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. The fines had doubled, and now there was a lawyer involved. I called Michael Chen again, and this time I agreed to hire him. I could not afford it, but I also could not afford to lose my home. Michael filed a lawsuit against the HOA, asking the court to declare that the HOA did not have the authority to enforce Section 4.7 against my truck. He also filed a motion for a temporary restraining order to stop the fines from accumulating while the case was pending. The judge granted the restraining order, which was a small victory, but the legal process was just beginning. Over the next few months, the case consumed my life. There were depositions, document requests, and endless back and forth between lawyers. Michael subpoenaed the HOA's records and discovered that I was right. The rule was being enforced inconsistently. Several other homes had violations that had never been addressed. When Michael asked Patricia Montgomery about this during her deposition, she claimed that those violations had been resolved internally, but she could not provide any documentation to support that claim. The case also revealed something else. Patricia Montgomery had a personal grudge against me. During her deposition, she admitted that she had noticed my truck shortly after I moved in, but she had not issued a violation notice because she was waiting for the right time. When Michael asked her what that meant, she became evasive. It eventually came out that Patricia had approached me at a community event about a year ago and asked me to volunteer for a neighborhood cleanup. I had politely declined, explaining that I worked long hours and did not have the time. Apparently, Patricia had taken this as a personal insult. "So you issued a violation notice against Mr. Irving because he refused to volunteer for a cleanup?" Michael asked during the deposition. "No, I issued a violation notice because he was violating the CC and Articus," Patricia said, but her tone was defensive. "But you waited a year to issue the notice, and you only did so after he declined to volunteer. Is that correct?" "I issued the notice when I became aware of the violation." "But you just testified that you noticed his truck shortly after he moved in, which was 2 years ago. So you were aware of the violation for over a year before you issued the notice. Why did you wait?" Patricia did not have a good answer. Michael used her testimony to argue that the HOA was acting in bad faith, selectively enforcing the rule to punish me for not being sufficiently involved in the community. The judge seemed sympathetic to this argument. The case went to trial in November, about 7 months after the initial violation notice. The trial lasted 2 days. Michael presented evidence of the inconsistent enforcement, Patricia's grudge against me, and the fact that my truck was not materially different from other trucks in the neighborhood. The HOA's lawyer argued that the CC and Articus were clear, and that I had agreed to abide by them. He also tried to paint me as a troublemaker who was refusing to follow the rules. The judge took the case under advisement and issued a ruling 2 weeks later. It was a mixed decision. The judge found that the HOA did have the authority to regulate what vehicles could be parked in driveways, and that my truck technically fell under the definition of a commercial vehicle. However, the judge also found that the HOA had enforced the rule in an arbitrary and discriminatory manner, and that this violated Arizona law. The judge ordered the HOA to rescind the violation notice, refund any fines I had paid, and revise Section 4.7 to provide clearer guidelines about what constituted a commercial vehicle. It was not a total victory, but it was enough. I could keep parking my truck in my driveway, and the fines were gone. The legal fees had cost me $12,000, which I had to put on a credit card, but at least I had one. Patricia Montgomery resigned from the HOA board a month later. I heard through the neighborhood grapevine that she had been forced out by other board members who were unhappy with the lawsuit and the negative publicity it had generated. A new board was elected, and they seemed more reasonable. They revised Section 4.7 to specify that only vehicles over a certain size or weight would be considered commercial vehicles, and they established a process for homeowners to request exemptions. I wish I could say that was the end of the story, but it was not. About 2 months after the trial, I started noticing strange things happening around my property. My mailbox was knocked over twice in the same week. Someone spray painted a crude insult on my garage door. My truck's tires were slashed one night while it was parked in my driveway. I reported each incident to the police, but they said there was not much they could do without evidence. I suspected Patricia was behind it, but I had no proof. Then, one night in January, I caught her red-handed. I had installed a security camera after the tire slashing incident, and it captured Patricia sneaking onto my property at 2 in the morning with a can of spray paint. She painted the word "scofflaw" on my driveway in bright red letters. I called the police immediately and showed them the footage. They arrested Patricia the next morning and charged her with criminal trespassing and vandalism. She tried to deny it, but the video evidence was irrefutable. She ended up pleading guilty and was sentenced to community service and probation. She was also ordered to pay restitution for the damage she had caused. The arrest made the local news, and it was humiliating for Patricia. Her reputation in the neighborhood was destroyed. People who had once supported her now avoided her. She moved out of Sunset Ridge a few months later, and I have not seen or heard from her since. As for me, I still live on Cactus Flower Drive, and I still park my truck in my driveway. The new HOA board has been much more reasonable, and I have even started attending community meetings occasionally. I learned a valuable lesson from this whole ordeal. Homeowners associations can wield enormous power, but that power is not unlimited. If you are willing to stand up for your rights, even against an organization that seems invincible, you can win. But I also learned that fighting back comes at a cost. The legal fees, the stress, the months of my life consumed by this dispute, it was all exhausting. I would not wish it on anyone. If I could go back in time and avoid buying a home in an HOA-controlled neighborhood, I would. But since I cannot, I am just glad that I came out on the other side intact. The whole experience changed me. I used to be someone who avoided conflict, who preferred to keep his head down and mind his own business. Now, I am more willing to speak up when something is not right. I have also become more involved in my community, not because I want to, but because I have learned that apathy is what allows people like Patricia Montgomery to thrive. If nobody is paying attention, if nobody is willing to challenge unreasonable rules or call out bad behavior, then the bullies win. I have also developed a newfound appreciation for the importance of documentation. If I had not kept detailed records, if I had not taken photos and saved every email, I probably would have lost my case. Evidence matters, especially when you are going up against an organization with more resources than you have. Looking back, I think the most frustrating part of the whole ordeal was the sense of helplessness I felt at the beginning. When I first received that violation notice, I felt like I had no control over my own life, like I was at the mercy of people who did not care about me or my circumstances. That feeling of powerlessness was almost worse than the fines or the legal fees. But I also learned that I was not as powerless as I thought. Yes, the HOA had authority, but that authority had limits. Yes, they had a lawyer, but I could hire a lawyer too. Yes, they had rules, but those rules had to be enforced fairly. The system is not perfect, but it is not completely rigged either. If you are willing to fight, and if you have a strong case, you have a chance. I think about the other people in my neighborhood who might be dealing with similar issues. How many of them received violation notices and just paid the fines because they did not know they could fight back? How many of them felt bullied or intimidated by the HOA board? I wish I could tell them all that they do not have to accept it, that they have rights, that they can push back. But I also understand why most people do not fight. It is expensive, it is time-consuming, and there are no guarantees. I was lucky in some ways. I had a good lawyer, a sympathetic judge, and a clear case of selective enforcement. Not everyone has those advantages. And even with all of that, it was still one of the most stressful experiences of my life. One unexpected positive outcome of the lawsuit was that it brought some of my neighbors together. A few people reached out to me during the legal process to offer their support. One neighbor, an elderly man named George, even testified on my behalf, stating that my truck had never bothered him and that he thought the HOA was overreaching. Another neighbor, a woman named Susan, started a petition to reform the HOA board, which ultimately led to Patricia's resignation. These small acts of solidarity meant a lot to me. They reminded me that not everyone in the neighborhood was on Patricia's side, that there were reasonable people who saw the situation for what it was. It made me feel less alone. After the trial, I also started researching HOA law more seriously. I learned that Arizona has some of the strongest homeowners association laws in the country, but that does not mean they are always enforced. Many HOAs operate with little oversight, and homeowners often do not know their rights. I even considered starting a blog or a website to educate people about HOA issues, but I never followed through. Maybe someday I will. For now, I am just trying to move on with my life. The lawsuit is over, Patricia is gone, and my truck is still parked in my driveway. Life has returned to a semblance of normalcy. I go to work, I come home, I watch football on Sundays. The only reminder of the whole ordeal is the faint stain on my driveway where Patricia spray painted that insult. I have tried to scrub it off, but it is still visible if you know where to look. I have decided to leave it. It is a reminder of what I went through and what I overcame. I also think about Patricia sometimes. I wonder if she regrets what she did, or if she still thinks she was in the right. I wonder if she learned anything from the experience, or if she is just angry that she got caught. Part of me feels sorry for her. She clearly had issues, whether it was a need for control or a desire for validation. But mostly, I just feel relieved that she is gone. The new HOA board has been a breath of fresh air. They are more transparent, more responsive, and more willing to listen to homeowners. They have also been proactive about addressing some of the issues that led to the lawsuit. They held a town hall meeting to discuss the CC and Articus and get feedback from residents. They established a formal appeals process that actually pauses enforcement while an appeal is pending. They even started a newsletter to keep everyone informed about what the board is doing. It is not perfect, but it is a huge improvement. I have started to feel like I actually have a say in what happens in my community, which is a strange and somewhat novel feeling. I never thought I would care about HOA politics, but after everything I have been through, I realize that these things matter. The people who run your HOA have real power over your life, and if you do not pay attention, they can make your life miserable. I have also noticed a shift in the neighborhood culture. People seem more willing to question the board, to speak up at meetings, to challenge rules that do not make sense. I like to think that my lawsuit played a small role in that shift, that it showed people they do not have to just accept whatever the HOA tells them. But maybe I am giving myself too much credit. Maybe people were just tired of Patricia's authoritarianism and were looking for an excuse to push back. Either way, things are better now. The neighborhood feels more like a community and less like a dictatorship. People wave to each other when they pass on the street. There is a sense of camaraderie that was not there before. It is nice. As for my truck, it is still going strong. It has over 100,000 miles on it now, and it is starting to show its age, but it is reliable and it gets the job done. I have thought about removing the company logo, just to avoid any future issues, but I have decided against it. That logo represents my livelihood, my hard work, my identity. I should not have to hide it to appease anyone. I did make one small change, though. I bought a new welcome mat for my front door. It says, "My driveway, my rules." It is a little petty, I know, but it makes me smile every time I see it. After everything I went through, I think I have earned the right to be a little petty. I have also become something of a local expert on HOA issues. Friends and acquaintances who live in HOA-controlled neighborhoods sometimes reach out to me for advice when they have disputes with their boards. I always tell them the same thing. Document everything, know your rights, and do not be afraid to stand up for yourself. I also warn them that fighting an HOA is not easy and that they need to be prepared for a long and stressful battle. One guy, a coworker named Dave, was being fined by his HOA for having the wrong color of gravel in his front yard. I helped him draft an appeal letter, and the HOA backed down. Another friend, a woman named Lisa, was being told she could not have a vegetable garden in her backyard, even though the CC and Articus did not explicitly prohibit it. I connected her with Michael Chen, and he was able to get the HOA to change its interpretation of the rule. These small victories give me a sense of purpose, a feeling that my experience was not entirely in vain. I have also thought a lot about what drives people like Patricia Montgomery. What makes someone so desperate for control that they are willing to harass and intimidate their neighbors? I do not have a good answer. Maybe it is insecurity or loneliness or a need to feel important. Maybe it is just a personality flaw. Whatever it is, I hope Patricia has figured it out by now. I hope she is getting the help she needs, but mostly I just try not to think about her. She took up enough of my time and energy. I am not going to let her take up any more. Life has a funny way of teaching you lessons when you least expect it. 2 years ago, I never would have imagined that a simple violation notice would turn into a months-long legal battle that would consume my life. But it did, and I survived. I am stronger for it, wiser for it, and more confident in my ability to stand up for myself. I still hate HOAs, though. If I ever move again, I am buying a house in a neighborhood without one. I have learned my lesson on that front. But for now, I am staying put. This is my home, my driveway, my life. And nobody, not Patricia Montgomery, not the HOA, not anyone, is going to tell me what I can and cannot do with it. The legal bills are still hanging over me. $12,000 is a lot of money, and it is going to take me a while to pay it off. I have picked up some side jobs on weekends to help make a dent in the debt. It is exhausting, but it is worth it. Every payment I make feels like another step toward freedom, another way of reclaiming my life from the mess that Patricia created. I have also started saving money for a potential future move. As much as I love my house, I am not sure I want to stay in an HOA-controlled neighborhood forever. The experience has left a bad taste in my mouth, even with the new board in place. There is always the risk that another Patricia Montgomery will come along, that the board will change, that the rules will become oppressive again. I do not want to live with that uncertainty hanging over my head. But for now, I am here. I am making the best of it. I am participating in the community, paying my dues, following the rules that actually make sense. I am doing everything I am supposed to do as a responsible homeowner, and I am parking my truck in my driveway, right where it belongs. Every time I pull into my driveway at the end of a long day, I feel a sense of satisfaction. It is a small thing, parking my truck in my own driveway, but it represents something bigger. It represents my right to make my own decisions, to live my life on my own terms, to not be bullied by people who think they know better. That is what this whole ordeal was really about. It was not just about a truck or a driveway or a violation notice. It was about dignity, about autonomy, about the fundamental right to be left alone. Those are things worth fighting for, even when the fight is hard. I think about the judge's ruling sometimes. He could have sided completely with the HOA or completely with me. Instead, he took a middle path, acknowledging that the HOA had some authority but also recognizing that they had abused that authority. It was a fair decision, and I respect it, even if it was not everything I wanted. The judge's ruling also set a precedent, at least locally. Michael told me that other lawyers in the area have started citing my case in their own HOA disputes. It is a small legacy, but it is something. Maybe my fight will make it a little easier for the next person who finds themselves in a similar situation. I have thought about writing a book about my experience, or at least a detailed blog post. I think there are a lot of people out there who would benefit from hearing my story. But every time I sit down to write, I find myself getting angry all over again. The wounds are still too fresh. Maybe in a few years, when I have more distance from it, I will be able to tell the story in a way that is helpful rather than just bitter. For now, I am focused on moving forward. I am rebuilding my savings, paying off my legal debt, and trying to enjoy my life. I have started dating again, which is something I did not have time for during the lawsuit. I have reconnected with old friends. I have even taken up a new hobby, woodworking, which I find surprisingly relaxing. Life goes on. The sun rises and sets. The seasons change. My truck sits in my driveway, a constant reminder of what I went through and what I overcame. And every day, I am grateful that I stood up for myself, that I did not just roll over and accept the injustice. Because in the end, that is what it was, an injustice. A small one, maybe, in the grand scheme of things, but an injustice nonetheless. And the only way to fight injustice is to stand up to it, even when it is scary, even when it is expensive, even when the odds are stacked against you. I won my fight. Not everyone does. But I did, and that is something I will carry with me for the rest of my life. It is a reminder that I am stronger than I thought, that I do not have to accept mistreatment, that I have the power to change my circumstances. And that is worth more than any amount of money, more than any legal victory, more than anything. It is the knowledge that I can stand up for myself, that I can fight back, that I can win, and nobody can take that away from me. As I sit here on my front porch looking at my truck in the driveway, I feel at peace. The battle is over. The war is won. Patricia Montgomery is gone. The fines are rescinded and my life is my own again. It was a long, hard road, but I made it, and if I had to do it all over again, I would. Because some things are worth fighting for, and my driveway is one of them.